Jinwoo Park never imagined that driving a taxi through the streets of San Francisco would teach him what billions of dollars never could. But on that foggy September evening, when a college student with worn-out shoes climbed into his back seat, everything he believed about success, worth, and humanity would be destroyed by a single sentence. Before we begin the story, comment below with the city you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Jinwoo Park was born into a world most people could only dream about. At 34, he was the heir to Park Industries, one of South Korea's largest conglomerates, a multi-billion-dollar empire that touched everything from technology to real estate. His family's name was whispered in boardrooms across Asia, with a mixture of respect and fear. In Seoul, his face appeared in business magazines. In New York, London, and Tokyo, executives scrambled to secure meetings with him. But Jinwoo carried his wealth like armor, cold and impenetrable. Raised by a father who believed emotions were liabilities and taught that the world was divided into winners and losers, Jinwoo had learned early that kindness was weakness. His childhood had been a series of private tutors, business strategy lessons, and constant reminders that he was different, better than everyone else. The Park family doesn't associate with ordinary people, his father had told him repeatedly. We exist on a different plane. Never forget that. Jinwoo hadn't forgotten. He'd built his entire identity around it. Now, as he stood in his corner office on the 45th floor of Park Industries' San Francisco branch, overlooking the glittering bay, Jinwoo felt nothing but contempt for the city below. He'd been sent here 6 months ago to oversee the American expansion, a task he found beneath him but necessary to prove himself worthy of eventually taking over the entire empire. His assistant David Chen knocked on the glass door before entering. The young man carried a tablet, his expression professionally neutral despite the tension that always filled the room when Jinwoo was present. Mr. Park, the quarterly reports are ready for your review, David said, placing the tablet on the mahogany desk. Jinwoo barely glanced at him. Leave them, and tell the marketing team their proposal was pathetic. If they can't do better, I'll find people who can. David hesitated. Sir, they worked all weekend on that presentation. Then they wasted their weekend, Jinwoo replied coldly, his slight Korean accent sharpening his words. I don't pay for effort. I pay for results. Is that clear? Yes, sir. David left quickly, and Jinwoo turned back to the window. The city stretched before him, a sprawling landscape of people he considered beneath him, workers rushing to catch buses, students crowding into coffee shops, families struggling to make rent. To Jinwoo, they were background noise, irrelevant. His world existed in the penthouses and boardrooms, in private jets and exclusive clubs where decisions that affected thousands were made over expensive wine. But beneath his arrogance, something had been stirring lately, a restlessness he couldn't name. The same meetings, the same deference from employees who feared him, the same hollow victories in business deals that meant nothing beyond numbers on a screen. Jinwoo had everything, yet he felt an emptiness he refused to acknowledge. That evening, Jinwoo's father called from Seoul. The conversation was brief and transactional, as always. The board is watching your performance in San Francisco, Chairman Park said, his voice carrying across the Pacific with the weight of expectation. Don't embarrass the family name. I won't, Jinwoo replied, his jaw tightening. Remember what I taught you. Sentiment is for the weak. The moment you start caring about ordinary people is the moment you lose your edge. After the call ended, Jinwoo sat in his penthouse apartment, a minimalist space of glass and steel overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. The view was spectacular, but he barely noticed it anymore. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness below. His phone buzzed. It was his friend from college, now a fellow executive in Seoul. Jinwoo, I have a challenge for you, Taemin said, his voice carrying that competitive edge Jinwoo recognized immediately. You always say you're better than everyone else, that you understand business and people, so prove it. Jinwoo's interest piqued. What kind of challenge? Live like an ordinary person for a month. No penthouse, no driver, no expense account. Get a regular job. See if you can survive in the real world you claim to understand so well. Jinwoo laughed. That's ridiculous. Why would I waste my time? Because you're always talking about how easy everyone else has it, how people just don't work hard enough. Here's your chance to prove your theories. Or are you afraid you might be wrong? The challenge struck Jinwoo's ego perfectly. He'd spent his entire life being told he was superior, and now someone was questioning whether he could handle what ordinary people dealt with every day. Fine, Jinwoo said, his voice sharp with determination. 1 month. I'll show you exactly how easy it is to survive without privilege. One condition, Taemin added. No one can know who you really are. Complete anonymity. Done. The next morning, Jinwoo began his transformation. He moved out of his penthouse and into a small studio apartment in the Tenderloin district, a neighborhood he'd never even driven through. The apartment was a fraction of the size of his walk-in closet, with peeling paint and a radiator that clanked through the night. The smell of old cooking grease lingered in the hallways, and the traffic noise never stopped. He bought clothes from a thrift store, jeans, plain t-shirts, a worn jacket, items he would never have touched before. Looking in the mirror, Jinwoo barely recognized himself. Without the designer suits and the aura of wealth, he looked ordinary, anonymous, and it made him deeply uncomfortable. To complete the illusion, Jinwoo needed a job. Something that would put him in direct contact with regular people, something that would allow him to observe their lives up close. After considering his options, he decided on driving a taxi. It was simple, required minimal training, and would give him access to conversations and situations he'd never experienced. Within a week, Jinwoo had his taxi license and was behind the wheel of a yellow cab, navigating the streets he'd previously only seen from behind tinted windows in the back of a Mercedes. The first few days were humbling in ways Jinwoo hadn't anticipated. The taxi smelled of cheap air freshener and decades of passengers. The seat was uncomfortable, the steering wheel sticky. The GPS system was outdated, and Jinwoo found himself getting lost in neighborhoods he'd never known existed. His passengers treated him with casual indifference or outright rudeness. They complained about the route, argued about fares, and left the back seat littered with coffee cups and food wrappers. No one looked him in the eye. No one said thank you. He was invisible, just a service, not a person. For someone who'd spent his entire life being deferred to, being kowtowed to, being treated like royalty, the experience was shocking. This is temporary, Jinwoo reminded himself each night as he returned to his cramped apartment, his back aching from hours in the driver's seat. Just 25 more days, and I can go back to my real life and prove Taemin wrong. But something unexpected began to happen. As the days passed, Jinwoo started noticing things he'd never seen before. The way a construction worker fell asleep in the back seat after a 16-hour shift, his hands covered in calluses. The single mother who carefully counted out exact change for her fare, apologizing for not being able to tip. The elderly man who needed help getting his groceries from the taxi to his door, and thanked Jinwoo with genuine warmth. These weren't numbers on a spreadsheet or labor costs to be minimized. They were real people, with real struggles, real dreams, real dignity despite their circumstances. Jinwoo found himself increasingly unsettled by what he was witnessing. The distance he'd always maintained between himself and ordinary people was disappearing, and it made him deeply uncomfortable. He didn't want to empathize. He didn't want to care. But something was shifting inside him, something he couldn't control. 3 weeks into his experiment, on a foggy September evening, Jinwoo was parked outside the San Francisco State University campus, waiting for a fare. The fog rolled in thick and gray, muting the streetlights and creating halos around passing cars. The air was cold and damp, carrying the salt smell of the bay. He watched students hurrying across campus, backpacks heavy, faces tired, most of them working their way through school while juggling part-time jobs. Jinwoo had never had to work for anything in his life. His education had been paid for before he was born. His future had been guaranteed. Watching these students hustle, He felt something he'd never experienced before, respect mixed with guilt. His radio crackled. "Pick up at the library, anyone available?" Jinwoo responded and drove to the campus library. The building was still lit up, its windows glowing warmly against the gray evening. Students moved in and out, some laughing in groups, others walking alone, burdened by more than just their textbooks. A young woman emerged from the library doors. She was in her early 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and an oversized university sweatshirt that had seen better days. Her sneakers were worn through at the toes, held together with what looked like duct tape. She carried a backpack that seemed too heavy for her thin frame, and under her arm was a stack of books. But it was her face that caught Jinwoo's attention. Despite her obvious exhaustion, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders slumped with fatigue, there was something gentle in her expression. She walked with her head up, and when she accidentally bumped into another student, she apologized with a genuine smile. She opened the taxi's back door and slid in, carefully placing her backpack and books on the seat beside her. The overhead light briefly illuminated her face, and Jinwoo saw she couldn't have been more than 22 or 23. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but friendly. "I need to go to 1847 Mission Street, please." Jinwoo nodded and pulled away from the curb. In his rearview mirror, he watched her lean her head against the window, her eyes closing briefly. She looked absolutely exhausted. "Long day?" Jinwoo asked, surprising himself. He usually didn't make conversation with passengers. She opened her eyes and smiled. "Is it that obvious?" "Yeah, pretty long. I had classes this morning, then a shift at the diner, then back to the library to study. Finals are coming up." "You're working your way through college?" "Trying to," she said. "It's not easy, but it's worth it. I'm studying to be a teacher." Something in Jinwoo's chest tightened. A teacher, one of the lowest paid professions requiring years of expensive education, and she was working multiple jobs just to afford it. "Why teaching?" he asked. Her face brightened despite her exhaustion. "Because kids deserve good teachers who actually care about them. I grew up in a rough neighborhood, and I had one teacher, Mrs. Henderson, who saw potential in me when no one else did. She's the reason I'm here, getting an education. I want to be that person for other kids." Jinwoo felt something uncomfortable stirring inside him. This young woman, who clearly had so little, was dedicating her life to helping others. Meanwhile, he had everything and had spent his entire life caring only about himself. "That's admirable," he said quietly. She laughed, a sound that was warm despite her tiredness. "Some people think I'm crazy. I could have studied something more profitable. But money isn't everything, you know?" The irony nearly made Jinwoo laugh. Here he was, a billionaire pretending to be a taxi driver, being lectured by a broke college student about how money isn't everything. They drove through the city streets, the fog growing thicker. The neighborhood gradually changed from the university area to a rougher part of town. Jinwoo noticed the buildings becoming more run down, the streets less well lit, the sidewalks populated by people who looked like they had nowhere else to go. "You live around here?" Jinwoo asked, feeling an unexpected surge of concern. "Yeah," she said. "It's not the greatest neighborhood, but the rent is affordable. Well, barely affordable. I share a tiny apartment with 2 other girls. We make it work." As they approached her address, Jinwoo saw it was a shabby apartment building with broken windows on the ground floor and graffiti on the walls. His penthouse in the nice part of town suddenly felt obscene. He pulled up to the curb. The fare read $12.75. The young woman opened her small purse and began carefully counting out bills and coins. Jinwoo watched in the rearview mirror as she laid them out on her lap, organizing them by denomination. "I've got," she counted quietly, $12.30. Her face fell. "I'm short. I'm so sorry. I thought I had more. I've been really careful with my budget this week, but..." She looked genuinely distressed, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "It's okay," Jinwoo said quickly. "Don't worry about it." "No, please, I can run upstairs and get the rest." My roommate might have some change, or I could give you my phone number and pay you tomorrow when I get my paycheck from the diner. I promise I'm good for it." There was such earnest honesty in her voice, such genuine worry about 45 cents, that Jin-woo felt something crack inside him. "Really, it's fine," he said. "Consider it on the house." She looked up, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. "Are you sure? I hate being in debt to anyone." "I'm sure. You're a student working hard." I remember what that was like. It was a lie. He'd never struggled a day in his life, but it felt right to say. She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through fog. "Thank you. That's really kind of you. Most people—" She trailed off, then shook her head. "Most people aren't very kind to people like me." "People like you?" Jin-woo asked. "You know, poor people, working-class people, people who take taxis because their car broke down and they can't afford to fix it yet." She said it without bitterness, just as a statement of fact. Jin-woo felt ashamed in a way he'd never experienced before. He thought about all the times he'd dismissed people exactly like her as lazy, as failures, as beneath him. His father's voice echoed in his head. "They don't work hard enough. They make poor choices. They're not like us." But this young woman worked harder than Jin-woo ever had. She was making sacrifices he couldn't imagine, pursuing a dream that wouldn't make her rich, but would help countless children. And she was doing it with grace and kindness, even finding it in herself to thank a taxi driver for 45 cents. She gathered her things and opened the door. "Thank you again," she said. "You don't know how much this helps. Every little bit counts, you know. Sometimes the difference between making it and giving up is just one person showing a little kindness." She closed the door and headed toward the building. Jin-woo sat there, frozen, watching her struggle with her heavy backpack and stack of books. She paused at the building's entrance, shifted everything to one arm, and dug for her keys. The security light above the door flickered, barely illuminating the scene, and then she turned back. She walked back to the taxi and tapped on the window. Jin-woo rolled it down. "I just wanted to say," she began, and her voice was softer now, more vulnerable, "that people like you, taxi drivers, waitresses, janitors, all the people who keep the city running, you matter. I know society doesn't always treat you like you do. I know people like that billionaire who owns that big building downtown, the Korean guy, Park something. I know guys like him probably don't even see you. They probably think you're nobody." Jin-woo's heart stopped. She continued, unaware of the bomb she was about to drop. "But you're not nobody. You're somebody's whole world. You might be a father, a son, a husband. You have dreams and hopes just like anyone else. And the work you do, driving people safely home, dealing with rude passengers, working long hours, it matters. You matter." Her eyes met his through the window, and they were completely sincere. She smiled again, a gentle expression full of genuine warmth. "Don't let people like Park or anyone else make you feel less than. People who have money but no compassion. They're the ones who are truly poor. You, with your kindness over 45 cents. You're richer than they'll ever be." She patted the taxi's roof gently. "Thank you for seeing me as a person tonight, not just a fare. That means more than you know." And with that, she turned and walked into the building, leaving Jin-woo sitting in his taxi, completely shattered. The words echoed in his mind. "People like Park probably don't even see you. They probably think you're nobody." She was right. She was absolutely, devastatingly right. Jin-woo had spent his entire life not seeing people. He'd built his whole identity on believing he was better than everyone else, that his wealth and status made him superior. He'd looked at people like this young woman, if he'd bothered to look at them at all, as failures, as lacking ambition, as not worth his time. But he was the failure. He was the one who was lacking, not in ambition or intelligence or opportunity, but in the most basic human quality: compassion. Jin-woo's hands trembled on the steering wheel. For the first time in his 34 years, he felt truly ashamed of who he was. Not because he'd failed at business or disappointed his father, but because he'd failed at being human. This student, who had so little, saw him, a man she believed to be a struggling taxi driver, and took the time to remind him of his worth. She'd given him something more valuable than money: dignity, recognition, kindness. Meanwhile, Jinwoo had spent his entire life taking dignity away from people, treating them as expendable, as nothing. "You're richer than they'll ever be," she'd said. The words cut through him like a blade. He thought about his penthouse, his cars, his designer clothes, his bank accounts with more zeros than most people would see in a lifetime. And he thought about her worn shoes, her careful budgeting, her tired face. Who was truly rich? Who had the wealth that actually mattered? Jinwoo sat in the taxi for a long time after she'd gone inside. The fog continued to roll in, thick and cold, obscuring the street. But Jinwoo wasn't seeing the fog. He was seeing his entire life with new eyes, and he hated what he saw. He thought about every employee he'd fired without a second thought, never considering they had families to feed. Every business deal where he'd crushed smaller companies, proud of his ruthlessness. Every time he'd walked past someone struggling, a homeless person, a tired worker, a stressed parent, without even acknowledging their existence. He'd been so proud of his success, his empire, his superiority. But it was all built on a foundation of cruelty and indifference. He was exactly the kind of person she'd described: money, without compassion, truly poor despite his billions. Jinwoo drove back to his studio apartment in a daze. He climbed the narrow stairs, unlocked the door to his tiny room, and sat on the edge of the cheap mattress. For the first time since starting this experiment, he didn't think about how much longer he had to endure. He didn't think about proving Taemin wrong or getting back to his real life. He thought about her words: "You matter." She'd said it to who she thought was a taxi driver. But she would never say it to Jinwoo Park, billionaire heir. To her, he was everything wrong with the world. Someone who couldn't see people, who thought he was superior, who was truly poor despite his wealth. And she was absolutely right. Jinwoo didn't sleep that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that conversation. Every word she'd said had exposed something in him, peeled back layers of arrogance he'd built up over decades, and underneath all of it, he found something terrifying. He didn't like who he actually was. The next morning, Jinwoo called Taemin. "I want to extend the experiment," he said. "What? Why? You were so eager to prove your point and get back to your real life." "Because I haven't learned enough yet," Jinwoo said quietly. "I need more time." He didn't tell Taemin about the student. He didn't tell him about the 45 cents or the words that had shattered everything he believed about himself. Some things were too raw, too personal to share. Instead, Jinwoo threw himself into his taxi driving with new eyes. He started actually seeing his passengers, really seeing them. The elderly woman who told him about her grandchildren, as he drove her to her weekly dialysis treatment. The young man rushing to the hospital to see his sick mother, his face tight with worry. The couple laughing in the back seat, holding hands, clearly going on their first date to a restaurant they'd saved up for. Each person had a story. Each person mattered. And Jinwoo had spent his entire life treating them all like they were nothing. One afternoon, he picked up a man in a business suit, someone who looked like Jinwoo used to look. The man spent the entire ride on his phone, loudly discussing a deal that would result in dozens of layoffs. He talked about the workers as numbers, as expenses to be cut, as obstacles to profit. "They should have worked harder," the man said into his phone. "This is business. If they can't keep up, that's not my problem." Jinwoo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That was exactly how he used to think. Exactly how his father had taught him to think. Workers weren't people with families and mortgages and dreams. They were line items on a spreadsheet. When they arrived at the destination, the businessman tossed a few bills at Jinwoo without even looking at him. No thank you. No acknowledgement that Jinwoo was even human. Jinwoo understood for the first time what it felt like to be invisible, to be treated as less than. And it burned in a way he'd never experienced before. That evening, Jin-woo found himself back at the university, parked near the library. He told himself it was just a good location for fairs, but deep down, he knew he was hoping to see her again, the student who'd changed everything. As the sun set, painting the fog in shades of orange and pink, Jin-woo watched students come and go. He wondered about their lives, their struggles, their dreams. Each one was a whole universe of experiences and emotions, and until recently, Jin-woo wouldn't have given any of them a second thought. His phone buzzed. It was David Chen, his assistant from his real life. "Mr. Park, I know you said not to contact you during your time away, but there's an emergency. The board is demanding answers about the expansion project. Your father is furious. You need to come back." Jin-woo stared at the message. His old life was calling him back. The boardrooms, the power, the empire. But the thought of returning to that person, the cold, cruel Jin-woo Park who thought he was better than everyone, made him feel sick. "Tell them I need 2 more weeks," Jin-woo typed back. "Sir, with all respect, you're going to lose everything if you don't—" 2 more weeks, that's final." Jin-woo put his phone away and looked back at the library, and that's when he saw her. The student walking out with that same heavy backpack, that same exhausted but determined expression. Before he could think about what he was doing, Jin-woo got out of the taxi and approached her. "Excuse me," he said. She turned, and her face broke into a smile of recognition. "Oh, you're the taxi driver from last week, the nice one who didn't make me feel terrible about being 45 cents short?" "I am," Jin-woo said, and his heart was pounding. I wanted to ask you something. If you have a moment." She checked her watch. "I have about 15 minutes before I need to catch the bus to work." "What's up?" Jin-woo gestured to a nearby bench. They sat down, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. How could he explain that her words had destroyed his entire worldview? That she'd made him question everything about himself and his life? "Last week," he finally said, "you told me something. About how I matter. About how people with money but no compassion are truly poor." She nodded. "I remember. Did I overstep? Sometimes I talk too much. My roommate says I need to learn when to keep my thoughts to myself." "No," Jin-woo said quickly. "No, you didn't overstep. You changed my life with those words." She looked surprised. "I did? You made me realize something I've been blind to my entire life. That kindness and compassion matter more than anything else. That every person, regardless of their job or income or status, has worth and deserves to be treated with dignity." The student smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. "You seemed like you needed to hear it that night. Sometimes we all need reminding that we're valuable just for being human, not for what we do or how much we make." "Where did you learn that?" Jin-woo asked. "That wisdom? You're so young, but you understand something most people never figure out." Her expression grew more serious. "When you grow up with nothing, you learn pretty quickly that people are willing to dismiss you, to look right through you like you don't exist. I've been the invisible person my whole life. The poor kid, the scholarship student, the girl in thrift store clothes, and it hurts. It hurts to be treated like you're nobody." Her eyes met his. "So I decided I would never make anyone else feel that way. Every person I meet, I try to really see them. The janitor at school, the cashier at the grocery store, the bus driver, the taxi driver, everyone. Because we're all just trying to survive, trying to make it through another day. And sometimes the only thing that keeps us going is knowing that someone sees us, that someone cares." Jin-woo felt his throat tighten. "You're an extraordinary person." She laughed. "I'm really not. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to be treated as less than. And I refuse to pass that pain on to others." They sat in silence for a moment. Students walked past, caught up in their own worlds. The fog continued to roll in, softening the edges of everything. "Can I ask you something?" the student said. "And you don't have to answer if you don't want to." "Of course." Why does a taxi driver care so much about what I said? I mean, I'm glad it resonated with you, but you seem, I don't know, troubled by it in a way that goes deeper than just taking it as a nice compliment. Jin-woo hesitated. He couldn't tell her the truth, that he was actually Jin-woo Park, the billionaire she'd used as an example of everything wrong with the wealthy. But he could tell her something true. Because, he said slowly, I used to be like those people you described. The ones with money but no compassion. I used to think I was better than everyone else. I used to not see people, to treat them as if they didn't matter. And your words made me realize how wrong I was, how empty that way of living is. She studied his face carefully. Used to be? You don't seem like that kind of person. You don't know me, Jin-woo said quietly. Maybe not. But I've met a lot of people and I'm pretty good at reading them. You have kind eyes, sad maybe, but kind. Jin-woo nearly laughed. Kind eyes. If she only knew. If she knew who he really was, she would see him as everything she despised. And somehow that thought was unbearable. I have to go, she said, standing up. My bus will be here soon and I can't afford to be late to work. But thank you for the conversation. It's nice to talk to someone who actually listens. Wait, Jin-woo said. What's your name? I feel like I should know the name of the person who changed my life. She smiled. It's Sarah Martinez, and you are? Jin, he said, using a shortened version of his name. Just Jin. Well, just Jin, she said with a playful grin. I hope you remember your worth. Whatever you used to be, whoever you used to be, that's not who you are now. We're all capable of change, that's what makes us human. She started to walk away, then turned back. And Jin, thank you for seeing me that night, for treating me like I mattered. That's a gift not everyone gives. Jin-woo watched her disappear into the crowd of students, her words echoing in his mind. We're all capable of change. Could he change? Could he become someone worthy of Sarah's faith in humanity? Someone who saw people and treated them with the dignity they deserved? He didn't know. But for the first time in his life, he wanted to try. The next 2 weeks were transformative in ways Jin-woo hadn't anticipated. He continued driving the taxi, but now every fare was an opportunity to practice what Sarah had shown him. He learned his passengers' names. He asked about their days, their lives, their struggles. He listened, really listened, instead of dismissing them as beneath his notice. He picked up a mother with 3 kids, struggling to get them all in the taxi with grocery bags and a broken stroller. Instead of being impatient, Jin-woo helped load everything, folded the stroller, and made sure each child was safely buckled in. When they arrived at their apartment building, he helped carry the groceries up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. Thank you so much, the mother said, tears in her eyes. Most people wouldn't even help me get the stroller in the car. It's no trouble, Jin-woo replied, and he meant it. He drove an elderly veteran to his doctor's appointment and waited in the parking lot, even though his meter wasn't running, because the man had no other way to get home. They talked about the veteran's time in the service, his late wife, his estranged son who never called. You're a good listener, the veteran said. Most young people these days can't be bothered with an old man's stories. Your stories matter, Jin-woo said. You matter. Each interaction chipped away at the armor Jin-woo had built around himself. Each moment of genuine connection showed him what he'd been missing his entire life. The simple human experiences that money couldn't buy and power couldn't command. But it was also increasingly difficult to live this double life. Every night, Jin-woo returned to his studio apartment and checked his phone, seeing hundreds of messages from his real life. Board meetings he was missing. Deals falling through without his approval. His father growing increasingly furious at his absence. You're destroying everything I built, his father messaged. Get back here immediately. Jin-woo stared at the message. Everything I built. Not we built. Not our family built. My father had built an empire on the backs of people he considered beneath him, using ruthlessness and indifference as tools. And he'd raised Jin-woo to do the same. But Jinwoo didn't want to be that person anymore. One evening, Jinwoo was parked outside a grocery store when he saw Sarah again. She was coming out with 2 small bags, clearly having bought only the essentials. She was counting bills as she walked, her face worried. On impulse, Jinwoo got out of the taxi and approached her. "Sarah," he called. She looked up and her face brightened. "Jin, hi, what are you doing here?" "Working," he said, gesturing to the taxi. "But I saw you and wanted to say hello. How are you?" "Tired," she admitted. "But okay. Finals are next week and I'm working extra shifts to cover rent. One of my roommates had to drop out and move back home, so we're scrambling to make up the difference." "That sounds really hard," Jinwoo said. Sarah shrugged. "It is what it is. I'll figure it out. I always do." There was a resignation in her voice that broke Jinwoo's heart. She was so young, working so hard, just trying to survive, and she was doing it with grace and strength that put him to shame. "Sarah," Jinwoo said, "can I ask you something? Hypothetically?" "Sure. If you met someone who used to be really terrible, who used to treat people badly and thought they were better than everyone else, could that person change? Like, really change? Or is who we are fundamentally fixed?" Sarah looked at him carefully. "Is this still about you? The person you used to be?" Jinwoo nodded. She thought for a moment. "I think people can change if they really want to. But it's not easy. It requires acknowledging the harm you've caused, feeling genuine remorse, and then doing the work to be different. Not just saying you're different, but actually changing your actions, your choices, your way of seeing the world." "What if that person had hurt a lot of people?" Jinwoo asked. "What if they'd been cruel and indifferent for years?" "Then they have a lot of work to do," Sarah said simply. "But that doesn't mean they can't do it. Redemption is possible for everyone, as long as they're willing to put in the effort and actually become better." "How would they even start?" "By doing what you're doing," Sarah said. "Asking questions, listening, seeing people. And when they have the chance to help someone, doing it without expecting anything in return." Jinwoo felt something shift inside him. He'd been so focused on his guilt, on how terrible he felt about who he'd been, that he hadn't thought about what came next. About how to actually be different. "Thank you," he said quietly. Sarah smiled. "You know, Jin, I don't know what your story is. I don't know who you used to be or what you're running from. But I can tell you're genuinely trying to be better, and that counts for something." They stood there for a moment, and Jinwoo felt an overwhelming urge to tell her everything, who he really was, why her words had destroyed him, how she'd changed his entire understanding of what mattered in life. But he couldn't, not yet. "I should get going," Sarah said. "I have to study before my shift tonight." "Can I drive you?" Jinwoo offered. "No charge." She laughed. "You can't keep giving me free rides. You have to make a living too. Please, consider it payment for the wisdom you keep sharing with me." Sarah agreed, and as they drove to her apartment, she told Jinwoo about her classes, her dream of teaching, the school she hoped to work at someday. Her passion was evident in every word, her love for education and children shining through despite her exhaustion. When they arrived at her building, Sarah turned to him before getting out. "Jin, whatever you're working through, I hope you know you're a good person. I can tell." "You don't know me," Jinwoo said again. "I know enough," Sarah replied. "I know you care about people. I know you listen. I know you go out of your way to help others even when there's nothing in it for you. That's more than most people can say." After she went inside, Jinwoo sat in the taxi, her words washing over him. She thought he was good, she believed in him, and somehow, that belief made him want to be worthy of it. That night, Jinwoo made a decision. He called Taemin. "I'm not coming back," he said. "What? Jinwoo, you can't be serious. Your father is going to disown you. The board is going to—" "Let them," Jinwoo interrupted. "I don't care anymore." "What happened to you over there?" "I learned that I've been living wrong my entire life, and I'm not going back to that person." He hung up and sat in his studio apartment, staring at his reflection in the window. Outside, the city hummed with life, real people with real struggles, real dreams. People he'd never seen before, people who mattered. Jin-woo knew what he had to do. The next morning, he drove his taxi to Park Industries. The 45-floor building gleamed in the sunlight, a monument to wealth and power. Jin-woo parked across the street and looked up at his corner office, thinking about the man who'd sat there just weeks ago. That man seemed like a stranger now. He walked into the building. The security guard, someone Jin-woo had walked past 100 times without acknowledging, looked at him in his taxi driver clothes with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" the guard asked, his tone suggesting Jin-woo didn't belong there. "I'm here to see the executive team," Jin-woo said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I think they'll want to see me. Tell them Jin-woo Park is here." The guard's expression changed dramatically. He stammered an apology and quickly called up to the executive floor. Within minutes, David Chen appeared, his face a mixture of relief and confusion. "Mr. Park? Why are you dressed like that?" "Because this is who I've been for the past month," Jin-woo said, "and I've learned more in these weeks than I did in 34 years as a billionaire." He walked past David to the elevator, riding up to the 45th floor. When the doors opened, he saw the conference room filled with board members, all waiting to tear into him for his absence. Jin-woo entered, and the room fell silent. His father stood at the head of the table, his face dark with fury. "Where have you been? Do you have any idea what you've done to this company with your childish game?" "It wasn't a game," Jin-woo said calmly. "It was the most important education I've ever received." "Education? You abandoned your responsibilities to play taxi driver. You've embarrassed this family, jeopardized deals, shown weakness to our competitors." Jin-woo looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw himself reflected back. The cold, calculating man he'd been raised to become. The man who valued profit over people, power over compassion. "Father, I've spent my entire life learning to be like you, learning to be ruthless, to not care about people, to see humans as resources to be exploited. And I've realized something. That's not strength. That's poverty. Real poverty." Chairman Park's face reddened. "How dare you? I'm not finished," Jin-woo said, his voice firm but calm. "I met someone, a college student who works multiple jobs just to afford her education. She's going to be a teacher, a job that will never make her wealthy. She lives in a run-down apartment and wears shoes held together with tape, and she has more wisdom, more wealth, more value than anyone in this room." The board members shifted uncomfortably. "This student looked at me, thought I was just a taxi driver, and told me I mattered, that my work mattered, that my humanity mattered. And then she said something that destroyed me. She said that people like us, people with money but no compassion, are truly poor, and she was right." Jin-woo turned to face the entire room. "We are poor. We're spiritually bankrupt. We have billions of dollars and zero empathy. We make decisions that destroy lives and feel nothing. We walk past human suffering every single day and don't even see it." "This is ridiculous," his father spat. "You've lost your mind." "No," Jin-woo said. "I've found it. For the first time in my life, I see clearly, and I'm not going back to who I was." "Then you're no longer part of this family," Chairman Park said coldly. "You're disinherited, effective immediately." The words should have devastated Jin-woo. He'd just lost billions of dollars, his inheritance, his place in the empire. But instead, he felt free. "I understand," Jin-woo said, "and I accept your decision." He turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving behind the stunned board members and his furious father. In the elevator, riding down from the 45th floor, Jin-woo felt lighter than he had in years. When he stepped out onto the street, he saw his taxi parked across the road. A taxi. His livelihood now, probably. No more penthouse, no more wealth, no more empire. And he felt okay with that. Jin-woo drove his taxi through the city, and for the first time, he truly saw it. Not as a place beneath him, but as home to millions of people just trying to survive. just trying to find meaning and connection and purpose. As the sun set, Jinwoo found himself once again parked outside Sarah's university. He didn't know what he was hoping for, but he waited anyway. And then he saw her, walking out of the library with that same heavy backpack, that same tired but determined face. Jinwoo got out of the taxi and approached her. "Jin," she said, surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I needed to tell you something," Jinwoo said, "and I need to be completely honest with you, even though it might make you hate me." Sarah looked concerned. "What is it?" Jinwoo took a deep breath. "My name isn't just Jin. It's Jinwoo Park. I'm the billionaire you mentioned that night. The one you said probably doesn't see people, probably thinks they're nobody. That was me. That's who I was." Sarah's eyes widened. "What? I've been pretending to be a taxi driver as part of an experiment, to prove I could survive like ordinary people. But you changed everything. When you told me I mattered, when you said people with money but no compassion are truly poor, you were talking about me. And you were absolutely right." Sarah took a step back, processing this information. "You've been lying to me this whole time?" "Yes," Jinwoo said, not making excuses. "I lied about who I was, but everything else was true. The way you made me see people differently, the way you changed my entire understanding of what matters, that was all real. Why are you telling me this now? Because today, I gave up everything. My inheritance, my position, my wealth. I walked away from all of it. And I did it because of you, because of what you taught me about what actually has value in this world." Sarah stared at him, and Jinwoo couldn't read her expression. Was it anger? Disappointment? Disgust? "You gave up billions of dollars," she finally said. "Yes. Because of something I said to a taxi driver. Because you showed me that I'd been living wrong my entire life, that I'd been cruel and empty and truly poor despite all my money. You saved me, Sarah. You saved my humanity." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Show me." "What?" "Show me you've changed. Not with words, but with actions. You say you're different now? Prove it." Jinwoo nodded. "How?" "Come with me," Sarah said. She led him to a community center in her neighborhood, a rundown building that offered after-school programs for underprivileged kids. The place was barely holding together, with peeling paint, broken windows, and outdated equipment. "This is where I volunteer," Sarah said. "When I have time between classes and work. These kids need so much: books, computers, safe spaces to learn and play. But there's never enough funding. Never enough resources." Jinwoo looked at the children playing in the gym with worn basketballs and broken equipment. He saw teachers trying their best with almost nothing to work with. He saw potential being wasted because of lack of resources. "This is where real change happens," Sarah said. "Not in boardrooms or through business deals. Here, in communities, with real people who care." Jinwoo understood what she was saying. If he wanted to prove he'd changed, this was how. Not by throwing money at problems from a distance, but by actually showing up, by seeing people, by being present in the work of making things better. "I want to help," Jinwoo said. "Not as Jinwoo Park, billionaire philanthropist making a tax-deductible donation. As Jin, a person who wants to make a difference." Sarah studied his face carefully. "You really mean that?" "I do. You were right when you said redemption requires changing your actions, not just your words. I want to do that. I want to be better." Over the following weeks, Jinwoo showed up at the community center every day. He tutored kids in math and science. He helped repair broken equipment. He drove his taxi to earn money, then used that money to buy books and supplies for the center. He listened to the teachers, to the parents, to the kids, really listened, seeing each person as valuable and worthy of his time. It was harder work than anything he'd done in a boardroom. It paid nothing. It came with no prestige or recognition, but it mattered in a way his business dealings never had. Sarah watched his transformation with cautious hope. She saw him connect with the kids, saw him learn their names and their stories. She saw him arrive early and stay late, never complaining, never acting like he was too good for the work. One evening, after the center had closed and they were cleaning up, Sarah said, "You know, I think you really have changed." Jinwoo looked up from sweeping the floor. "You mean that?" "I do. The Jinwoo Park I heard about, the ruthless billionaire. He would never do this. He wouldn't see the value in it, but you do. You see these kids as mattering. This work is important. That's real change." Jinwoo felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the work he'd been doing. It was the warmth of being seen, of being recognized for who he was becoming rather than who he'd been. "I had a good teacher," he said quietly. Sarah smiled. "I didn't teach you anything. I just reminded you that you're human. Everything else, that's all you." As months passed, Jinwoo built a new life. He continued driving his taxi, taking pride in work he once would have considered beneath him. He spent his free time at the community center, watching kids flourish with just a little bit of attention and care. He formed real friendships, not business relationships, but genuine connections with people who knew him as Jin, not as the park industry's heir. And slowly, carefully, his relationship with Sarah deepened. She introduced him to her roommates, her friends from school, her world. Jinwoo met people working multiple jobs, struggling to make rent, fighting to build better lives for themselves. And he didn't see them as beneath him anymore. He saw them as fellow humans, each with their own struggles and dreams and worth. One evening, Jinwoo and Sarah sat on the steps outside her apartment building, watching the sun set over the city. The fog was rolling in, painting everything in shades of gold and gray. "Can I tell you something?" Sarah said. "Of course. When you first told me who you really were, I was so angry. I felt betrayed, like you'd been lying to me about everything. I understand that. But watching you these past few months, seeing you actually change, not just say you're different, but become different, that's the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Do you know how rare that is? How few people are actually willing to admit they were wrong and do the work to be better?" Jinwoo thought about his father, about the board members, about all the people in his old world who would never question whether they were living right. "It's easier to stay the same," he said. "To never look at yourself critically. But it's braver to change," Sarah said, "and you're one of the bravest people I know." Jinwoo turned to her, seeing her clearly in the fading light. This young woman who'd been working multiple jobs just to survive, who'd taken the time to remind a taxi driver of his worth, who'd shown him what actually mattered in life. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," he said. "You saved my life, not metaphorically. Actually, I was so empty, so lost, so fundamentally broken as a human being, and you showed me a different way. You showed me that people matter, that kindness matters, that being human matters. I don't know where I'd be without you." Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. "Jin, you did that yourself. I just planted a seed. You're the one who decided to let it grow." They sat in comfortable silence as the fog continued to roll in. Jinwoo thought about his journey, from the arrogant heir who thought he was better than everyone, to the taxi driver who learned to see people, to the man he was now, still figuring things out, still making mistakes, but fundamentally different. "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked. "Long term, I mean. You can't drive a taxi forever." Jinwoo had been thinking about that. "I have some ideas, nothing big or impressive. But I want to work with communities like this one, helping create opportunities for people who don't have the advantages I had. Not as a wealthy donor swooping in to save the day, but as someone who actually shows up and does the work." "That sounds perfect," Sarah said. "What about you?" Jinwoo asked. "Still planning to be a teacher?" "Always," Sarah said firmly. "It's what I meant to do." "You're going to be amazing at it," Jinwoo said. "Those kids are going to be so lucky to have you." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat together as darkness fell over the city. For the first time in his life, Jinwoo felt truly rich, not in money, but in meaning, in connection, in purpose. 6 months later, Sarah graduated from college. Jin Woo was there in the audience, cheering louder than anyone when her name was called. She'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and now she was walking across that stage with her teaching degree. After the ceremony, as friends and family celebrated around them, Sarah pulled Jin Woo aside. "I got a job," she said, her face glowing with excitement, "at an elementary school in my old neighborhood, the one where I grew up." "That's incredible," Jin Woo said, pulling her into a hug. "Those kids are going to love you." "I hope so," Sarah said. "I want to be for them what Mrs. Henderson was for me, someone who sees their potential when no one else does." "You will be," Jin Woo said with certainty. Sarah looked at him, her expression growing more serious. "Jin, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you ever regret it? Giving up your inheritance, your wealth, your position in your family?" Jin Woo thought about it carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes I think about how much easier life would be with that money, how much more I could help with resources like that. But then I remember who I was when I had all of that. And I realize I was miserable. I was empty, I had everything and felt nothing." He took her hands. "Now I have so much less in terms of money and power, but I have something I never had before. Genuine relationships, purpose, the ability to actually see people and connect with them. That's worth more than any amount of money." Sarah squeezed his hands. "You know what? I think you're finally rich in the way that actually matters." "I learned that from you," Jin Woo said. "You were right that night. People with money but no compassion are truly poor. And now, even though I don't have much money, I feel wealthier than I ever did before." Time continued to pass. Jin Woo and Sarah built a life together. Not a glamorous or wealthy life, but one filled with meaning. Jin Woo eventually started a small non-profit organization focused on providing educational resources to underfunded schools. It wasn't Park Industries, but it touched lives in real, tangible ways. Sarah taught at her elementary school, becoming exactly the kind of teacher she'd hoped to be. Someone who saw potential in every child, who treated each student as valuable and worthy of investment. One evening, 2 years after that first taxi ride, Jin Woo was invited to speak at a community event. Sarah sat in the front row, smiling encouragingly as he took the stage. "I used to be a very different person," Jin Woo began, his voice steady. "I was the heir to a billion-dollar company. I had wealth, power, status, everything society tells us matters. But I was empty inside. I was cruel, arrogant, and completely disconnected from my own humanity." He paused, looking out at the audience. Teachers, community workers, parents, students. "And then I met someone who changed everything. A college student who was working multiple jobs just to afford her education. She was broke, exhausted, struggling to survive. But when she saw me, thought I was just a taxi driver, she took the time to tell me I mattered, that my work mattered, that my humanity mattered." Jin Woo's eyes found Sarah in the crowd. "She told me that people with money but no compassion are truly poor. And she was absolutely right. I had billions of dollars and I was the poorest person in the world, because I had no empathy, no connection, no understanding of what actually makes life valuable. That young woman saved me. She showed me that every person, regardless of their job or income or status, has inherent worth. That kindness and compassion are the only things that truly matter. That being seen, being acknowledged as human, that's the gift we can give each other." Jin Woo's voice grew stronger. "I gave up my inheritance to become the person she believed I could be. And I've never regretted it. Because now I'm truly rich. Rich in relationships, in purpose, in meaning. I see people. I connect with them. Try to make a difference in whatever small ways I can." "That student is now a teacher," Jin Woo continued, smiling at Sarah. "And she's changing lives every single day, just like she changed mine. She's proving that the work we do in our communities, the connections we make with each other, the compassion we show, that's what actually matters. That's real wealth." The audience applauded, but Jinwoo was only looking at Sarah, whose eyes were filled with tears. After the event, they walked home together through the foggy San Francisco streets. Jinwoo reached for Sarah's hand, and she took it. "I'm proud of you," Sarah said, "for everything you've become." "I'm proud of us," Jinwoo replied, "for building something real, something that matters." They walked in comfortable silence until Sarah said, "You know, I never told you this, but that night when you picked me up in your taxi, when I was 45 cents short, I was actually having the worst day. I just found out my financial aid might not come through for the next semester. I was exhausted from working a double shift, and I was seriously considering dropping out." Jinwoo stopped walking. "I had no idea." "I know. But your kindness that night, the way you treated me like I mattered, like those 45 cents weren't a big deal, it reminded me that there are good people in the world, people who see others, who care, and it gave me the strength to keep going." She looked up at him. "So while you say I saved you, Jin, the truth is we saved each other. That's what real connection does. That's what happens when we actually see each other as human." Jinwoo pulled her close, and they stood there in the fog, two people who'd found each other by chance and transformed each other's lives by choice. Years passed. Jinwoo's nonprofit grew, helping thousands of students access resources they needed to succeed. Sarah became an award-winning teacher, known for her ability to reach even the most challenging students. They married in a small ceremony surrounded by the community that had embraced them both, not the wealthy elite Jinwoo had once known, but real people with real hearts. One day, Jinwoo received an unexpected call. It was David Chen, his former assistant. "Mr. Park, Jinwoo, I don't know if you remember me, but I wanted to reach out. Your father passed away last month." Jinwoo felt a complicated rush of emotions. "I'm sorry to hear that." "The board has been discussing the future of Park Industries," David continued, "and they want to know if you'd consider returning, not as the same person you were, but as who you are now. They've seen the work you've been doing, and they think the company needs someone with your current values, not your old ones." Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment. "Thank you for thinking of me, David. But I'm exactly where I need to be." "I understand," David said. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you found your path. You're a different person now, a better one." After hanging up, Jinwoo told Sarah about the offer. "Do you want to go back?" she asked. Jinwoo shook his head. "That world isn't mine anymore. I don't want to be in boardrooms making decisions that affect thousands of people I'll never meet. I want to be here, in communities with real people making real differences in individual lives." Sarah smiled. "You know what's funny? You gave up billions to become truly wealthy. Most people will never understand that." "I don't need them to understand," Jinwoo said. "I just need to keep doing the work that matters." And he did. For the rest of his life, Jinwoo worked in communities, helping create opportunities, seeing people, treating everyone with the dignity they deserved. He never returned to the world of high finance and corporate power. He never regretted walking away from his inheritance, because Sarah had been right all along. People with money but no compassion are truly poor. And Jinwoo, with his modest non-profit salary and his simple life, was richer than he'd ever been as a billionaire. Rich in love, in purpose, in meaning, in connection. The taxi ride that had shattered everything had also rebuilt him into someone capable of actually living, actually seeing, actually being human. And that was worth more than all the money in the world. What do you think? Did Jinwoo make the right choice by giving up his inheritance to become a better person? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on wealth, compassion, and what truly matters in life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring narratives like this. Rate this story from 0 to 10 and let us know what kind of stories you'd like to see next. Thank you for being part of this journey with us.